Blog Talk Radio.
Here at ACO Radio, American Communications Online, or any affiliated stations or websites are not responsible for what guest hosts or call-ins may say. All programming is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only.
Hello world, this is TJ Morris. All right. Theresa J Morris, formerly TJ Thurman Morris, or Theresa J Thurman Morris. I'm real excited to be here. So welcome all you ground troops spinning around smartly on the planet. We're going to do something different tonight. We're appearing on a Tuesday. We do have a 7-day-a-week, 24/7, and we have lots of radio shows around the world on various topics. But we're going to do a self-help tonight and get to know someone that is new in my life, but apparently not new on the planet. His name is David L. Rivera, and I am excited to talk to him tonight because he, during this time in life, has figured out a way to support himself and his wife, and we'll find out who else, in this lifetime on the planet. And in this time when we're doing COVID-19, staying home, et cetera, we are interested in how we can help other people survive. Now, whether this is going to help us survive or not, only you will be able to tell me, but I know that I've got a lot of friends in high places and low places. We're going to do our best to entertain you somewhat tonight, but I do have him on live talk shows on tjmorrisradio.com. If anybody's interested in assisting us in the future, we're going to see how meeting a new human on Earth in the year 2020 will help others, because I'm all about doing my part, and so is David, from what I understand. I did get a chance to speak to him briefly about a week ago and verify today on LinkedIn that he would be here. Let me tell you a little bit about him. David L. Rivera is a professional entrepreneur. He is a friend of mine on LinkedIn, and his services provided are writing, editing, copywriting, and assisting small businesses and entrepreneurs for his own home at his location in Newport News, Virginia. Now, he has used his computers and cell phones to make a living, and I imagine just landline phones, so he says he's got a good sense of humor, so we'll see. But right now, I know that he's done this roughly 30 years or more, and I'd like to get to know him, where he was born, where he grew up, if he's always lived in the States or been abroad, and what kind of life he's had, and trust that you guys will support us in getting to know others as we build our ACO association. ACO for Ascension Center Organization, but also my company called American Communications Online. So I'm just starting to get out myself after losing my husband and then my daughter. And David's had an interesting occurrence where his house caught fire recently in this time, roughly February of 2020, and then lo and behold, COVID-19 comes along. So he's had a lot of plates to spin in the air like me, so I found that curious. And so, just the fact that he's taking some time to come and help us build our ACO association with all my friends and the community I'm doing my best to build in cyberspace is a great thing. And hopefully you guys can get in touch with him and throw some business his way too. But let's see, as we do this new weekly live talk shows, this is on self-help. So let's hope we can self-help. But let me get David on here and let him introduce himself. David L. Rivera, is this you? I hope.
This is me.
Yay, all right. Finally, we get to do this properly. Now, David, tell us where you were born and if you are proud to be an American.
I was born in Tucson, Arizona, and yes, I'm proud to be an American.
Well, good. That's the icebreaker. Now,
so
would
where do
you
we
tell
want
me
to go?
a little about yourself? I want to know what it was like growing up in America, because I have a lot of friends that listen to me in the Emirates and India and Australia and the UK, but most of them listen to me about things that they're used to hearing me talk about, and spirituality and paranormal and psychic type stuff. So I am an entrepreneur, and I did pay thousands of dollars to learn to be an entrepreneur with building businesses around the world, and took one almost public. I took it up to bridge, but having investors, things like that, is a little different than doing a home business, I understand from you. So let's start with how you grew up, roughly up till about age 12, and then on into senior, what you did in your high school years, because our minds like to sort of know who we're really doing business with. It gives us a good feeling, like Howard Buffett, making money with Howard Buffett. So I support Jeff Bezos with my own books on American communications online, and also our Lulu and Timely Manner books and Amazon. But I also support Bill Gates because I use his Microsoft products. So I want to get to know you, not just as a person, but also later on in your getting to know you, this is your life kind of recording, as to what kind of tools you use. But start with your life. So people, even with your company, you can always say, go listen to the tape on my domain or on my website. But start out, if you don't mind, with who are your parents, and are you of Scottish or English or German descent, that kind of genealogy stuff?
Well, first of all, I grew up in Tucson, which is purely nothing but desert. So I learned a lot about the makeup of the desert, the animals, the critters, and so it's a different from being more in the metropolis, the big city. You learn to deal with the wildlife, because in the desert, it pretty much keeps you company. So there are those things like scorpions and black widows and all kinds of cactus that can jump out and grab you in a hurry. And you learn pretty quickly what to stay away from. And you don't see much rain. That was the other thing about when I did move to New Hampshire and Virginia, where I live now. I'm used to rain now, but before in Tucson, a humid day was any time the humidity got above 30%. Here in Virginia, people go, 30% to them is like the matter of how you feel, where you live. That kind of makes that difference. So, yeah, I've had to adapt to the environment more so than anything else, moving from desert to desert, and then because I lived 10 years in Denver, Colorado, which is an altitude change. But it's still the edge of the desert, despite the fact that it gets a lot of snow. So there was a difference. And I learned throughout my life that, I pretty much managed to adapt to the environments as I moved from one to the other. My parents were divorced at a very early age, so I never knew my father growing up until I was in my 20s. I finally reached out and found him, and he was alive for about another 14 months before he had passed away. So at least I had the opportunity to find out, a small glimpse of his life. And he was just pretty much a normal working guy as anybody else. He worked for Conoco. He was a truck driver, and I have like 5 other half-brothers and sisters because he remarried, and that was pretty much that. And we never knew, I never knew the other half of my family, if you will, until, just shortly before he passed away. And then after that, we kind of went our separate ways, because to them it was like, oh, the bigger half-brother we never knew. And they were happy, without, knowing not who I was to start with. So it was just easy enough for them to pretty much walk away. From there, I was married once. I had a first wife. We separated and divorced about 3.5 years after. We had one son. And for 2.5 years, I was a single parent. And growing up, one of the two things that I did the most was write and bowl. My bowling developed more quickly than my writing skills did. I eventually joined the PBA in 1976, went on tour until 1983, which was about the same time that my first wife and I went through a divorce. I had to make a decision. Could I really be a single parent and be on the tour in in the early 1980s? And the answer was no. So I retired from the PBA in 1983. And after that, I remarried about 2.5 years later to my second and current wife, now of 34 years. And I went back to school, back to college, and took technical writing and editing, and quickly went into that realm of expertise. I started off, first of all, in dealing with the medical field. And as time went on, I expanded that into just about every other thing. I based it on my electronics experience. I also was in the Society for Quality for nearly 20 years as well. So that took me into another direction and opened up more avenues of resource. So I ended up with a very well-rounded area. I got into entertainment as well as education. One thing just kept leading to another before I had a fairly easy time being able to move, through industries as seamlessly as if it were air. So that pretty much brings us to where I am now, which is being a home-based entrepreneur. And have been so, I've been writing now for almost the better part of 30 years. And I look for people with creativity in what they do in their jobs and in their lives. That becomes the common and binding part of what I do and how I do it for people.
Okay, I'm unmuting. Okay, I've got up here writing money at home business or writing money at home business. David L. Rivera. I've got ACO Professional Association folks because I'm building a community of professionals, and I've got a lot of friends that are in social media, thousands as a matter of fact, and I have quite a few different places I share social media. But I asked for David's help because building a community is not easy. And in what I've learned in my past, doing the type of work I did, I was in high school and was a musician and married to a musician, and he worked at NASA during the day, so I got to be around astronauts and engineers. And even one of my last jobs with the government, I was working at Hawaii Naval. It was called PACNAV FAC-ENGCOM, which is the Pacific Naval Facility Engineering Command. And but then after that I moved, well, it was at the same location, Personnel Information Security. So I learned how dry and humorous most of my life. My husband and his father, and my dad was accountant in math. So I was around accountants and engineers, and my mother worked for geospace. So I've learned how to grow up, but I was mostly I was tall and thin, and people always carrying on about my looks, so my mother put me in modeling, and then I was a spinneret for the Houston, city of Houston. I was ambassador of Goodwill, twirled batons, and did pretty shop and photos and things like that. And my mother was a writer, so I find it curious now that I'm looking to grow a professional association that's recognized. But I do have Dun & Bradstreet number, and for American Communications Online, and it was my TJ Morris ACIR. So As I'm rebuilding my company again after retiring, David and I are, I'll just say we're over 60. And that'd be nice, but we look relatively young. But I would like to take us into the realm of today's time with COVID-19 environment, just to let you know. He comes from a writing background. My mother was a writer, and then my husband was, and I did publish some books, and I inherited my companies. My mother and her mother worked for printing, publishing, but textbook types. And I'm not very technical, although I worked in engineering, and I had to learn how to do course and scope and manuals and writing for the government. I read a lot more manuals than I actually worked on, but I feel like there's something here we can all do together now. And David has been doing it for quite some time. So I thought we'd go ahead and see how best David could help all of us. If you want to join us in social media, that's always free on Facebook and LinkedIn, where David and I met. But David, go ahead. Now, your LinkedIn, is yours under David L. Rivera or David Rivera, or is it Editorial Documents, your company name? How do you list on both of them, Facebook and LinkedIn? Let's get that established.
Well, Facebook, I have kept primarily for family and friends. I had some writing friends because, again, there's a large community of people on Facebook, and I had a few of them who were writers, and they just bombarded everybody with, buy my books, buy my books, buy my books. And I thought, no, this really isn't what I want to have happen on my Facebook. So there are some that are still, friends only because it's not, oh, hey, I wrote a new book, buy it. They actually share some of their personality, and they're more of a friend, and it's sort of a normal chat, like you would sit down with somebody and say, oh, here's what I'm doing. Facebook, not so much. LinkedIn is where, being that professional community, I've started making contacts. I've been on LinkedIn since 2006, and LinkedIn had a major overhaul where they redid basically their groups and things of that nature, and that was in 2015. And it wasn't really until 2017 that, it occurred to me, I've been on here and I really haven't made use of it. It's a terrific resource. So I went from about 100 or so connections, and right now I'm sitting at 11,934 connections. So I sat down, did my homework, and started making connections, and it has started to pay off tremendously in that regard, where people come to me, they want to know what I do, how I do it, and there are those who say, oh, can you do this for me? And the answer is typically yes. But every once in a while, there's a few no's that sneak in there, just because sometimes somebody gets a little silly about what they want to have done, and I'm going, I don't think so.
Well, now I've noticed some of your clients on your domain. I grew up with the internet like most people did, but fortunately for me, I was working for the government, so I got to watch it grow from the government over to Net Solutions, which I think you and I talked about, and then of course Ray Kurzweil went from DARPA into Google, and he's the big guy that we used to watch on Ed Sullivan, but Ray Kurzweil has been a big instrumental help with a lot of people and changing the way we use Google, including he's written some ways to make us answer each other without having to type so many words, which I noticed with you the other day, even on LinkedIn. So it's getting to be a cool thing. So as the internet and the cyberspace community grows, I do feel like if you're going to own a business, you should own a domain, or at least have a home for your business, we used to call, and that's called, you buy your domain, and you can get it for a year, 10, 25 years. Usually just most people buy them a year, maybe 2, maybe 3. We like to see you do it 5, but I used one TJ Morris for media for 5 years and didn't really use it because I didn't like the word media. Now I wished I hadn't given it up like an idiot because it's still my TJ Morris name. And now some porno group or something has it over in China. So I learned my lesson only recently, folks. If you've got a name that's involved with your business, don't give it up. So you've had the same name, Industrial Documents. Now, what made you choose that back in the day? From bowling, I think you went back to school to learn to do technical writing. But what made you choose that name, and explain it? So is it working for you, or do you have to explain it like with me? Because when I saw Industrial Documents, I immediately went back to my government, the pictures in my mind and writing tech manuals. But just give us an idea of why you chose that and how it's worked for you, if you don't mind.
Well, again, the industrial side is that, yes, because I work industrially at that point in time doing just that, technical documentation. So it seemed a good marriage because that's what I was doing primarily. And then, of course, as the market changed, I started doing more fiction, more nonfiction that isn't always necessarily a technical manual, where I sometimes would have to team up with somebody like a graphics guy who does all the graphics. In other words, you see these fancy pictures of, a car that's literally taken apart piece by piece type of thing, as, we sometimes see. So it depends upon what they were doing and how they were doing it that, I sometimes would rely on, shall I say, the more graphically oriented people who, in technical writing and editing, take pictures and expand them, take them apart, whatever. And my job would oftentimes be having to deal with explaining the technical terminology oftentimes, how to write procedures and things of that nature. So Industrial Documents seemed a good marriage. And, of course, the end side of, documents is pretty self-explanatory.
Well, now that you're home working all the time, have you considered using another type of domain name? Because I know you do domains, and I do too. I was talking to you about SSLs too that were supplied, but, I do a reseller. But, what I do, we can get into putting our resources together to help people in the future, I hope, as a professional organization from home, because I believe that that's only going to grow. We can talk about that today because I've got the topic as writing money at home business, or maybe I'll put writing money a home business. But I don't know, you know a lot of tricks of the trade, but writing money, it's not like we're counterfeiters, folks. I wanted to get something up there that was like to catch your view, because I'm so I have a lot of followers in niche genres, which I definitely recommend if you're into, hobbies or ancient culture, New Thought teachings, and I'm into metaphysics and have a lot of those friends. But also, this should bring in, David, people, like you said, you don't want just only book writers that just want to, they've written their book, buy my book, because I did have a barrage of those back about 2005 and 6. And they finally calmed down. But I learned, because of the niche genres I were in, that people like to discuss ancient cultures or the History Channel or the documentaries, or just come on the show and talk story with me about various topics. So this is hard for me today doing self-help only. So I'm grasping for your help here. Writing money at home, how would people think of you if we put you in this professional association? I've got you over on a page called Live Talk Shows right now, because you're my first.
Okay.
So literally, folks, I've been doing this 8 years, but I'm really grasping for help here, because I'm not used to doing a self-help show in a different place at Blog Talk Radio. So self-help and how you make money at home as a business. But, David, you're obviously not starving to death. So and I know that everything's changed, but tell us, how would people write? Because most of us have learned with computers, it comes loaded, usually with Windows 10 nowadays. And I use Androids because I was a Type Jockey. But a lot of people, my my relatives and my grandchildren, a lot of them like apples. But then when I used to have my own retail store and sold phones, I learned a lot of people would come back and trade in their apples for an Android. And it was just Androids seemed easier to use. But a lot of people in graphic design, they want apples. So I don't know what all you know or how you want to get into this, but I'm going to let you figure out how to make money and with what. So go for it. Tell us what you think.
Well, as far as cell phones are concerned, I think it's a matter in part of what seems to fit individuals. Like you say, some people like Apples, others like Androids. I particular tend to enjoy and use the Android because, yes, I do find it to be easier and oftentimes quicker for me to do most things on there. But I primarily use a computer in my work. You know, my cell phone is just that. For the most part, it's a phone more so than anything else. I don't, other than I keep photographs on it from time to time where I take something that, oh, that's interesting. I can use that on a project and, snap a picture or two or three, and I've got what I need, and it's, just as easy then to download it to my computer. But for the most part, I was in the process of taking everything off one of my computers, which was running Windows 7, because it's no longer being supported by Windows. So I was moving everything over to my other computer, which was an 8 or 8.1, whatever. When the house fire decided to help me in a hurry and melted both my computers, so I had nothing. So now I'm being forced into having to learn Windows 10 in a heartbeat, literally overnight. Fortunately, it's not too far different from, the 7 or the 8, but it's got newer features and other things that I just haven't found yet. So I'm still growing into my Windows 10.
Well, yeah, things have changed a lot, and now they're getting where the phones are an extension of ourselves. And the people that are running their businesses, I've watched them for years run it from their phones. And now that I'm going back into business to help other people basically with their own businesses from home and creating a professional association of people I can trust to refer business to, it's daunting to say the least because so much has changed, and it seems like these advertisers, even on my phone, I'm trying to figure out how to protect and download. But, I've got it protected on my computers pretty much, and Google's pretty good about not messing with you too much. But let's start with, for me, have a laptop and a cell phone, and then they want to grow their business. Now, have you have made a living? You want to mention any kind of jobs you've had from your home, or what kind of, did you advertise in the local newspaper to get started? Let's get down to, people that have a laptop and a cell phone maybe at home. I work with musicians and authors and consultants and event planners. Very few that are working at a paid job. Most of these people are already at home or entrepreneurs or over 65, or they just want part-time money. But what kind of clients do you get from your home in Newport News?
I get a wide variety of clients. Most of them, again, come from just about every walk and direction, if you will, as far as, how do I do this or how do I do that? And the questions really come from each individual. And the first thing that I tell any of them, if they're a writer, the first thing they really have to know is what are you going to do? Are you going to self-publish anymore, or are you still going to go with a traditional book publisher? And from there, depending upon which answer they give me, well, I'll give them what information they need to know. But in today's market anymore, when it deals with writing in particular, you have to still get your story, your book, professionally edited from somebody who does editing for a living. Now, typically, there is the other thing called a style guide, and this is what every book publisher uses. And every book publisher pretty much kind of writes their own style guide. And a style guide is nothing more than a set of rules by which they edit and publish a book. And since no two publishers are exactly the same, because they print books based upon the clientele or the subject matter, genre, if you will, that works best. And oftentimes, book publishers are looking for authors who pretty much tell stories in the manner to which they're familiar with. Again, even within certain genres. So book publishers are very nitpicky to a certain extent when they're looking for somebody. So oftentimes, my first question, and if you're looking for an editor, the first question that editor better ask you is, if you're going to use a traditional book publisher, who are you looking to send your manuscript to? Because it's going to make a whole lot of difference. This is where people get, shall I say, disillusioned. Oh, I had some guy, edit this book for, whatever, Chicago Manual, style guide and all of that, but that's not what that particular publisher wants. In other words, the better off, your product is edited, the better your chances of getting accepted by that particular book publisher. In other words, know your book publisher. What is their style guide? And oftentimes, most of them are a little bit stingy. They don't want that information getting out, because there are other book publishers who are pretty anxious sometimes to know what their competitors are using as far as the style guide is concerned, and they have no problem trying to mimic it and match you up and take customers away from you. So it's still a dog-eat-dog world in the book publishing industry. Not everybody is willing to share that style guide information. Now, a good editor will know those folks, and oftentimes they'll share it. And I've had some of the big publishers nowadays, and fortunately it's gotten easier because this outfit, LinkedIn, a lot of these editors from all of these different big publishing houses, it's all the way down to the smaller ones. Once they see who you are and they can see you out on LinkedIn, then they can pretty much say, yeah, I think I can trust this person, and give them a little heads up and say, okay, especially if you've got a story or a client that's got a story that will fit them. And I use also the analogy like a lock and a key. The more your book or your story fits that publisher like a key, you have a better chance of unlocking them and getting your story published. Self-publishing is a slightly different story. You really still need to do one thing: be a good storyteller. But then in the end, you're the one that's going to have to go out and do all of the promoting. You wear so many hats. You're going to have to find the book publisher. You're going to have to find a distributor, which, and do all that legwork that traditionally a book publisher would do for you.
Yeah, I worked back in the day when, after working for the government and drove a big truck, I got to go around to a lot of publishers and distributors, and they were really concerned because it was the late 80s, early 90s, and people were about trees and not killing trees, and it was hurting all the book publishers. But then I went through the time in the late 90s, 98, 2003, where, oh, man, so many of the magazine newspapers had gone under, and we didn't know if there was going to be anything like newspapers and magazines anymore. And lo and behold, when I was learning to be a publisher myself, I got off the road, and I had to at least do 12. There was all Lightning Source and all kind of different in between. They weren't Vanity Press, and they weren't like major publishing companies, and there was already a Morris Publishing doing recipes, so I became TJ Morris Publishing. But when I was driving a big truck and going and pick up these things, they were always this concerned. They were laying off people. It didn't matter whether it was the rolls of paper or the ones going to the magazines or the printers. I even worked in a printing company, was a catcher, and I learned to bind books. And I learned everything about printing you could possibly imagine, and from business cards to the font styles to putting the books together, the type and the weight and everything you can imagine detailed. The only part I never did, and although I loved it, was the artwork, but I do respect graphic artists. And I got through the Amazon phase. I had just gone through producing music and music as well about the same time, Napster, and we had, it was terrible because we were all going to the internet with our music and our books, and I was both. I was a creator, so I wanted to create music and write music. But it got to be where once I put $85,000 in one project alone for my own personal music as a songwriter, then I got DVDs, started taking around Nashville. You can't get them played, and I learned even through, I was produced them through the Sony company, one of its derivatives and distributors in Nashville. So I got on and learned about CD Baby and different, I had to, if I sung something that somebody else owned, you have to pay them the rights through the union. And same thing with musicians. I was married to a musician, so learned to respect intellectual property. But even after I did all that, I wound up watching, who was it, Steve Jobs take it where the money, and you couldn't even get $1 for your songs or $10 for 10 on the side of a DVD or C, back then. So same thing with publishing. Then all of a sudden Jeff Bezos comes in with Amazon. Here I am. I was always a day late and $1 short, folks, with cyberspace business or the internet business worldwide, getting in on a decent level, thinking I was doing the right thing because that's what I wanted to do. But you can lose your shirt going, from the money you think you're invested in a great thing, but it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game, right? But anyway, after learning about, how we were going to do it, it got down to, okay, I still want to make music. I can use Pro Tools on my computer at home, and I still want to write books, so I can use Amazon, and they had Create Space, and then they just recently, in the last 2 or 3 years, they went to Kindle, and now I get foreigners talking to me. I can't understand just trying to self-produce on Kindle. So I did learn, though, it's a good thing to try to sell your own books as a independent, which is what I am working with now, is a lot of independents, because if you can get so many thousands, then you may get somebody interested. But just going direct to a big publisher, the big publishers were upset, they felt like, with Amazon. That's a long story if you know the history about print-on-demand books. So, we got where we didn't want to keep them in distributors on the shelves. It was too costly, and we didn't want to keep them in our garages anymore. And so, there's a few people that still do. They're old-timers. They'll usually be over 45 years old. But most of the people today, they are putting their own ideas. And that's the trick, I think, is keeping you alive, is about being alive and staying alive and finding something that you're creating. My dog, I'll have to go shut her up. But talk a little bit about, what we can do, if you don't mind, or how you see you and me, because we do have cell phones, we do have computers, we are working at home, and people can charge whatever they want. But give people an idea, if with an association like ours of people that want to work from their homes, how do you see people coming together and networking? How does that help? Have you got any ideas?
Well, the biggest thing that happens is the internet, and there's just becoming more and more and more platforms. It started out with Facebook. You've got LinkedIn. There's just more and more that are coming along every day because each one has something different. You've got Twitter and so on, where again you're limited in what each one of these services and platforms provide. And from there, it's just a matter of also what works for you, or how you get something, which platform, tends to work the best for you. You've got Pinterest, which is more graphics. It's more about pictures and things of that nature. And you go, oh, yeah, there's some great ideas that, that can be had there as well. And it just goes on and on and on of, where you want to go. The best thing, again, is to pick one, settle in, learn about it, and see if it really suits what you're doing in terms of what product is it that you're creating and that you're trying to sell.
Well, you help people get their own, I believe how can I say this? Let me go back to my dying mother, because all she ever wanted to do was write. And she wrote for romance and things that were selling, and she was embarrassed about it, wouldn't let us kids look at it, paranormal or modern romance. When I was a kid, I guess they were, in her mind, were close to being those tabloids at checkout counters. They were magazines. But, she made a decent living. But she wrote for the newspaper in Texas Monthly and would get special assignments, they called them back then. She may make $50, $3.75 for one, but not much,
Yeah.
But anyway, nowadays people are working from their home to help people get their stories. And my mother said you are the author of your own life story. Now, how many people do you help get their stories out? And how do they find you? Are you advertising locally on radio or TV or billboards or newspaper ads? Or how do you advertise? Or do you strictly use the Internet?
I strictly use, for the most part, the Internet and primarily my website as far as that goes, mainly industrial documents. But I also co-chair a editing and writing class, or workshop, I should say, through a public library near me. And the group meets once a month. And from that group, people come and go in and out of these groups. And from there, somebody will sit down and say, okay, fine. And I look at, when the writing, we teach them, we go through vocabulary, we go through structure, we go through, just about everything. And out of that, people will come and say, well, how do I write a memoir? How do I write, young adult and science fiction and all of that? And one of the things that I keep telling them is it's all about story. You have to have a good story. You have to be able to carry that reader so that they want to turn to the next page. They finish one, they go to the next, and they go to the next, and they go to the next. And it takes really very consistent storytelling. You don't want to wander off the reservation and go into something else, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, where was I? That's the end of, a good story sometimes. Sometimes people want to say, well, how do I write my memoir? And there are better ways and there are worse ways to write a memoir. I mean, it's your story. It's your life. You should know how you lived it for the most part. So here again becomes, what avenues do you go down as far as writing your story? But you still have to be one thing, a storyteller. And you have to be able to hold that reader's attention. One of the things I ask people, I said, you know who makes the best editors? And the answer is one thing: people who hate to read. Because if you can't hold the attention of somebody who hates to read, then you're probably not going to hold the interest of 90% of the readers anyway. So that's one of the things that makes me such a good editor. I hate to read. You have to capture my attention and then hold it. And it has to be done with a good story. Oftentimes, people will put in pounds and pounds of fluff into their story to try and make it look pretty, sound pretty, whatever. But it gets cut from there and down to the bare bones in some cases. A publisher has to like your story enough to put time and effort into going through the rounds of editing to get a polished product before they take it to a printing company and then go out and distribute it to bookstores and whatever. And hopefully, you're lucky, if you sell, be a blockbuster book. And it's always the same thing.
A real life experience of the author. Now, as people write autobiography, that's usually chronologically growing up, I guess, but there's no rules, maybe. I don't know. It depends on the style, maybe, but I guess I was just always told writers write and just write every day, because I knew I was going to be a writer in the third grade, and I wrote my first book in the third grade. It was just paper folded in half. And we thought we were so creative, me and my girlfriend. It was about me and my girlfriend and what we were going to do. So, from there, I get a little bit better. So I've got quite a few books published, and I published them. I had some people wanting my books, but I didn't want to pay them, especially after learning how it all worked and going out firsthand experience and watching everything almost collapse, So between an autobiography and a memoir, but people, you are the author of your own life story, and I do encourage you to write your book, and I've got a logo, or basically what's called an imprint, when you're in publishing in timely manner books, so we crank them out pretty quick. But these days, the minimum, just if you want to do something for yourself, is just start writing. A minimum of 25 pages, and Kindle's gotten where they didn't even want our content chapters written on the beginning. It was really strange what we went through, so you could read them on your Kindle books or these tablets. So interestingly enough, we were having to send them in without content, chapter listings, things like that. You just start reading and scroll through the Kindle. So I guess you need to know what you're writing and why you're writing it. And usually if you'll start with your own life story, everything you've done, and it's pretty much expected that by 50 years old that you've written your own book, your author's book. And that was the way I was trained growing up, because people would say, wait till you're 50, and I didn't get it. I don't know if they were trained in school or if it was just the generations of the 60s, 70s, and 80s or what. But I did finally get mine written, but it was in, I think, I knew by 50 or 52. I think I wrote mine maybe when I was 52, but I'm still not satisfied with it. So we're always still living our lives, and it comes back to how you want to live in the now, because the past is the past and the future hasn't got here yet. So you live in the now, but what makes you want to live? We have to have hope. And one thing about learning about depression, which I've learned because of so many of my relatives have died around me, and I don't know, as a kid I thought they'd live forever. But until you've lost a husband and a child, younger than you, you're not supposed to bury your children. There's just no hurt, no pain like it, I tell you. So, I haven't even written about that yet, and now it's in my past. But anyway, what kind of help do you think if you were in a group of people meeting online? Because we had meetup groups like you had. I had one at the library. We have a great meeting room here in Gulf Breeze, and a great library, can seat 35 to 50 people. We can put them, at the desk, or we can put them in a circle. But and we have places here. I promote events. We have 2 a year, but they're more metaphysical, spiritual, New Age. But let's say you and I decide we want to have a weekly meeting just to inspire others. I guess first we'd have to take a survey and see if people are interested. But I don't know. I want to grow something, and I've got plenty of websites out there, but I don't want to pay all the kind of money I've been paying in the past, back when we thought we were all writers. Now it's getting to be where you have to have secure sockets, SSLs on your domain name. So, but in order to help people listening on the genre self-help, maybe we should explain transport layer sockets or how sockets work on your certificates, but that may be down the road. So maybe in order to help people, you want to start with us just telling them why they should have a domain, or you think that's only if they're blogging or writing or selling, or I think they've got to start somewhere. So this should maybe be live talk shows, self-help 101 or something. Help me platform this or get it organized with you being a writer already. What can you say that you'd like to have people listen to your first radio show? Because We can do these blog shows or these talk shows for 2 hours and put them on our websites. And probably, if nobody listens to them but you and me, at least we can learn about ourselves, David. Well, what would you tell us, you and me, learning to write together, but not just doing it by myself, but having you critique or me critique you or us edit each other? You know, I told you how we used to do that in law firms. Even law firms may be great people, but as professionals, we still had to check each other and find things. You think you got it right. You know, you think, oh, I would never do that. But now with Grammarly on your computers, you know, here it could be H-E-A-R or H-E-R-E. I catch things like that. There, T-H-E-R-E on my clients. I catch T-H-E-R-E, you know. And some of these people, they're so cute. They think because they're on my radio show, they're going to be instantly famous. But, you know, if people think they're writing a book, if they get it written, they're instantly famous. Well, they are an author. They're an accomplished author, so we give them that. But go ahead. How do you think, and how should we start this, helping you and me and using maybe more tools than we've got, but the resources we have? Got any ideas?
Yeah, first of all, the simple process, you know, in looking over this thing, the writer, then there's a publisher, then there's a distributor. In other words, all of the steps that it takes to go through. You write something, you edit it, you print it, and then somebody has to buy it. And that's the whole process from start to finish. It sounds easy, but it really isn't. Because, yeah, first of all, you have, like I said, you have to have a story to tell, and it has to be interesting because that's what's going to make people buy it. And you're right. There's a boatload of genres. There's science fiction, young adult, and the list just keeps growing and growing. Now there's all kinds of, you know, self-help books as well, so on. It really has grown, so you have to find that publisher that's going to fit that. Now, that's just one side where you're dealing with paper and ink. Now we've gotten into this with all of this technology we have, you know, again, computers. Just about everybody has a computer. And what's out there? Websites. I mean, it doesn't make any difference if you're talking about Facebook or if you're talking about, hey, I have a domain name, and that's where, you know, you're trying to draw people to you. Well, that's an altogether different animal, and we could talk hours on that as far as that goes, because you need to choose a domain name that, one, search engines are going to find fairly easy. I have created domain names that are literally about the subject that I want search engines to find. And, I mean, at one point in time, I was managing upwards of 80 domains. Some were successful and some weren't.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that.
It happens. Technology, it's a wonderful thing, or it can kill you.
So what happened is someone called in on the computer on Skype, and I couldn't answer it, and then it came because I'm using my computer on the show. But I wanted to let him know it's that John, that friend from California. I guess I didn't get with him Sunday, but I've been helping him build his brand, and he's writing a book. So, but we could talk about him for a moment because he got to know me 5 years ago. I don't know where you were in the conversation when all that happened, but I couldn't hear anything. So when you heard me come back on, for some reason it interrupted my cell phone. I'm on Zinc, too. We should talk about that, shouldn't we, if we're going to do live radio shows? Because I've got the studio hooked up, and I've got my phone hooked up, and my cell phone hooked up, all three to manage this show. And so, doing radio and podcasting is a little different than just writing books. But where were you in the conversation when I so rudely was attacked?
Websites I was getting into websites, and domain names are important because you want search engines to be able to find them. And oftentimes I would create a domain name that literally was the name of whatever it was that I was after. Because search engines do just that. They look for keywords, period. And if your domain name, Industrial Documents, wasn't very strong of a name when it came to search engines, I would have been better off putting up Technical Writing and Editing or selfhelp.com. That would have caught more showing up in search engines and saying, oh yeah, hey look, you're somebody who does technical writing and editing and managing or whatever. And I've found that that's how you make success out of a domain name. John Doe just doesn't make it all the time. Putting up using your own name does not normally work because nobody's going to know your name to start with. I mean, how would you find, John Doe, book writer or publisher or whatever, if all you do is just put a name that's simple? Nobody's going to know you. Whereas if you put up what you actually are doing, in other words, Technical Writing and Editing.com, works really well. One of my customers lucked out really. He's a jeweler, and he has jewelry repair and design. The two things, or the three words that most people would flat out look for. Yeah, I got a piece of jewelry and I need to get it designed or I need to get it repaired. And so when they put that in there, his website comes up every single time. And it's always usually on top of the list. So naming a domain name is very important. You have to think twice about it, and then you also have to see if there's availability to it. Because domain names are like a telephone number. Only one person can have that domain name. Just like one person can only have a specific phone number. So therein again becomes you want something that people are going to be able to find easily.
Sorry. Live in a duplex. Hush, Coco. The lady next door we're not accustomed to having. We've been without somebody next door for a few months. Really upsets my dog, David. So a domain is like an address, folks. And on the internet, on the cyberspace highway, where we all now live with our phones, whether we want to admit it or not, if you want to be found, if you're just an individual, sure, Facebook's fine. And a lot of people dropped off of that in 2018, but there's still plenty where that came from. Now, what we're doing here, am I coming through okay, David?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, you are.
My goodness. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you fell off the planet again there for a moment.
I did.
You're back.
Yeah, it's learning with this phone I'm talking on. It says Blog Talk Call In, but learning on these domain names, I don't know why, but somebody else called me and it knocked me off. So this zinking, I'm going to have to learn, folks. I know that we all can't know everything, and I do things every day on the internet and in cyberspace. Now, I've got clients and customers and followers like everybody out there. But I want to learn more of the technical aspects of what's going on, especially doing radio after 8 years. I've been doing them. But I'm having more trouble now with with these new cell phones than I ever did before. And then a lot of my technicians around the world in various countries say it's slow because of this COVID-19. So many people are home, and especially during the work day here in America, it's really slowing down, even though I'm on 5G. So now we've got all kind of new things to think about now that we're using cyberspace, and we want to help you while you're at home how to make a living. Now, there's ways to do that. If you have your domain, you can have AdWords and AdSense, but you can also, something I'm going to try, which I never was willing to do because it's so much work, is set up affiliate marketing. And right now I'm mostly interested in software and how it applies to every day. But, it's best to have a use for it. So if you want to sell things, you can sign up for things like eBay, which most of you probably already know about. Amazon, sell books. I've sat next to people in hospitals while they're working on their phones, and they're selling books or they're selling products from Alibaba in China or whatever. If they're not playing on Facebook, a lot of them just go sit and play Candy Crush. So I guess you can sit and play a game if you don't care about making money, but this day and time, if you do, let's talk about writing and making money at home with David L. Rivera. So, David, now that we know that we've got your name out, David Rivera, David L. Rivera, and we can put your name out there if they know your name, and that's how I've worked mostly with people that people already know their names are looking for them, and they may not have good representation with keywords, hashtags now. But, folks, we went through helping back in the day creating Google and how you had to have so many words. So we used to fiddle around 5 to 25, 15. Then we decided 10, all of us that were open source and helping out create all these volunteer nonprofit associations, Wikipedia, and I don't know, you name them out there that created Firefox, one of the browsers, one of the big nonprofits. And we still have nonprofits out there. WordPress is one of them. Matt Mellenberg, I believe, is his name, and he has Automatic. But, Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world from Amazon. And, we just started. We had no idea. This guy here just had a regular house living in suburbia. Now he's the richest man in the world off of just wanting to box up some books and send them, sell crate books. I remember when I had distributors of products and how we were going around the country and looking for, distributors, and then it was really odd. Even they were hurting. So I've watched it all go, but I didn't have the foresight that Jeff Bezos did for Amazon. But maybe we should talk a little bit about what we're doing here with podcasting and then get into videos. But I've seen a general progression, especially on YouTube. Now, you're not big on YouTube, although you've got a few, you've got one channel, I think, or one under your company, right? Industrial Documents. But that's your YouTube, right?
Correct.
I've got thousands. But I've been doing it for years and years, throwing them up there on YouTube. But they've cracked down, too. A lot of the laws have changed to what you can and can't do. I don't know how it's going to work out from home, but when I was in Kentucky, I didn't have to sign up if I wasn't really selling things, if I was just a blogger or a writer and then selling my own books. But are you up on the laws as far as people working at home? I have 2 businesses licenses here, David. Businesses. Mm-hmm. Business licenses. Yeah. It's like chicken breastises. That's what you say.
Really? Okay.
You're going to kill me. It's on your radio show or your live talk show. So let's
well, let's talk about business licenses for just a moment.
Okay.
Especially those folks who are going to work from their home. Some cities allow home-based businesses. Others want you to go out and literally have a brick-and-mortar business. Again, it depends upon where you live. You have to check with, the city which you're living in. Will they allow you to have a home-based business? Newport News, Virginia is a very friendly, home-based outfit because they look at it on one hand as you're already paying taxes on that property, and now they want you to have a business that gives them a little more income. And you get to a point. See, I could get to a point where, if I start selling over, a certain level of income as far as that goes, then my tax rate starts going up on my business. And, again, you have to look at the tax base of what every city charges, a business. Fortunately, and I say fortunately for me, is that my level has never gone up that I have to pay quarterly taxes. I just pay a flat fee each year. So am I necessarily in a hurry to start making more money? Not really. I'm comfortable staying under that because it affords me to make enough money that I don't have to go into another tax bracket. And then all of a sudden, you're looking for a tax accountant, somebody to help manage your money and, knows a lot more about taxes than you do. So that has always been again, I try to keep things simple so that I don't have to have, somebody to keep track of this, that, and the other thing. But since my wife was good at taxes, guess who does my taxes?
Your wife does your taxes?
No,
it's good to have one. I don't have one. So. Well, all right. So you've been paying your own, I guess we could use you for example because we've got your name and it's your show, it's your business, Industrial Documents, but I'm trying to get you hooked to me. But, we're both independent contractors, I guess, if we got into business with each other in a joint venture. But let's say that people are listening and they say, make money at home. How would I do that? So first they need to check with their local, where they are. So it's always about location, as we say in the old retail corporate business. But so they have to check and make sure where they are that they can have an internet business. That means cyberspace online right here, World Wide Web, where you're going to own your own domain. And your domain name is like your address, but then you're going to need a host and a place to, so that's sort of the place to host it. And then building a domain online is like building your website. So we say domain names, website, hosting, online, and email. We even have emails to match. So your host, you can have like TJ at TJ Morris Agency, although I don't use it. I still end up using Gmail, but I'm also paying for a director at UAP Associates because somebody picked that for me, and I bought it for $60 or something for a year or two. So, you can buy them or they can come in your packages. But go back to location. You need to know where you live. Like I live in Gulf Breeze, Florida, to use me for an example. However, because I run a domain and a website and have been a reseller and done radio and all that in Kentucky, I knew that I probably didn't have to have certain licenses, but others I did. So I went and moved here, and I checked and see if I could run a business out of a home. And this is actually where I'm living. It's a Gulf Breeze address, but I'm in the county, which is on the same street that runs right through the town, but I'm out far enough that I'm in the county. So tax-wise, city-wise, I guess I don't have to pay city tax, but I have to pay for the county and state. Now, I don't even know if Florida, I guess they have a state tax. I don't even know. So these are things you want to find out, right? Business, web hosting. But I have a business license, but I'm over 65, so I get it. As long as I don't make over $1,500 for one of them, like for my spiritual business, I don't have to report it. But they do send me a letter based on what computers I've got in the county because I'm a registered business. So then I've got my radio show business, and that's a whole nother deal. Now, I'm still using the same computer, but, it's a different business. But they want to know what kind of equipment you've got. Now, I don't really understand that except for depreciation and taxes in a business. You may know that more than I do, but I haven't really had to worry about that yet, except the files that they send me to fill out for small businesses. So there's little things you need to find out that a lot of people may not even care about until it's too late. And I don't want to be like Willie Nelson and find out millions of dollars later that I owed all this money and they take everything. So go ahead, folks, and check about doing your home-based business and check on your location. Make sure you can do it on a laptop from home. Or how do they do it? They have to have a home address. They have to have a place in case the state or the IRS wants to serve you. Or you can have, like I'm an agent of service for certain people. I can be served for their companies or their LLCs or their corporations if I'm their agent of service for filing these papers. So the next thing, are you a sole proprietor or do you want to do it? Like if David and I'm in Florida and he is in Virginia, we may want to do a joint venture online. But it depends on who collects the money in what state. If we do an event together, you have to check with the what they call the venue, right? And that would be different if we all met at a meetup group, like you met at the library. But if you're in education, too, that's another thing. Check with the IRS. If you list with education and you're open source, and then you're working unincorporated with other people, which we do when we talk to people on social media, we're just putting information up there for free that people sell and make money off of. Sounds funny, doesn't it? But we do. We give away our information. Now, venue is the place where something happens, especially if we organize anything. But I would like to meet once a year so I can meet David. So we could say that we are helping people become better entrepreneurs, working at their home base if they have a legal business license and Uncle Sam knows you're there. But they know you're there anyway because of your IPC code. And that is another address, talking about location. You are now an extension of your cell phone. You want to talk a little about that, communication, or, the definition? Because wherever we go, there we are. And everybody knows it that's dealing with this cyberspace. How do you want to deal with that? Because it's true. And we're not being conspiracy theorists.
No, we're not conspiring to do anything. We're guilty of being business people and entrepreneurs. And the fact that, like you say, this is truly, in a sense, open source. We're not charging anybody anything over the air like this. It's there to be listened to and learned from or enjoy, whichever the case may be. I mean, we could be a simple radio station. We'd be, again, having to deal with the, the public domain, which is, again, freedom of airwaves for everybody. And yet that's not what happens. You have to deal with the FCC.
Right. I'm listed. I'm legal. I have my FCC license listed, and every time I worked at a radio station, and now I own one. So I have my FCC license listed with the FCC, and then I pay a company to broadcast me called Blog Talk Radio, and I pay Shoutcast. I pay Spreaker, I pay Stitcher, I pay Spotify, I pay all these companies for distribution, and iHeart picks me up. A lot of companies pick me up because they didn't used to back in the day. They wouldn't unless you had at least 300 hours, which I do. But now, because it got so competitive in podcasting, some still make you pay if you want better service, and others, it depends on how many gigs or how many shows you're storing. Like I pay $85 a month at one place, $35 another, $45 another. And then I can get the whole shooting match. Some of them, like Spreaker, will send them out to 20 or so for you if you qualify. So nowadays, podcasting's got easier, but on the other hand, it's less expensive, but it's more competitive, so you don't know. So they've really gotten strict about the genres in talk show and music, right? So BMI, of course, and ASCAP, they'll monitor the music you're playing as people study on YouTube. You can't just put anybody's music out there anymore. You have to pay the people to pay the royalties. YouTube, on the other hand, right? Everybody seems to have a YouTube, like you've got your IPC code in your phone. If you've got a phone and a computer, you've probably got a YouTube channel. It's a platform, American Online, and it shares, it shares what you put out there, just like most social media.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's considered a platform, and, it's out of California, but now doesn't, Steve Chen, Chad Hurley, and Javed Karim opened up, they founded it, but now they sold it, and now doesn't Google own YouTube? It does, or Microsoft, Google, right? Owns
I'm
YouTube?
not sure. I'm not sure who owns it anymore. I mean, that's one of the problems is that it's kind of like Field of Dreams. If you build it, they'll come. You build a monster, anything, and you sell it. There's a gentleman when I was living in Colorado. His whole lifestyle was based on one thing. He would find a niche in some in some industry that nobody was doing anything with, and he'd build a little company, and he'd build it up and build it up and build it up until it got the attention of the rest of that particular industry, and somebody would say, this guy's doing something nobody else is. We can't stand the competition, so they'll buy his company. And that's how he was on a 5-year plan. He would create a business and sell it every 5 years. And then, as soon as he sold that one, he's already on to the next business in some other industry. And I watched him do that several times, working in part as one of his employees in one of his businesses. I first went into
them write code, just like we all know the story of Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg, right?
Yeah.
So but then the guys with Google sold that. Mark Andreessen, I remember he sold it. And then look at PayPal was Elon Musk. Of course, look where Elon Musk is today, too. But they knew a little more than we did, folks, and grew up where an environment where writing code was almost normal. They just happened to be geniuses at it. Can you imagine growing up where we learned that? I'd like to know about these type of multi-billionaires. They're all on the top of the food chain now, the top, 10%? I don't know, but if we're helping people on the bottom, it's like the money that in the U.S. they're cutting, to help with the COVID-19 situation that we're in, and they're comparing it to worst depression. I don't like to talk about bad things because I don't like to bring it into my life, but it's out there, folks. So if you're at home and you've got a phone and a cell phone, or a cell phone that you can talk to people online, you can do what I'm doing if you want to pay the money. Everything costs. But what I'm trying to do is build something that I can use my resources for people to pay less, and everybody together we can, work together on certain topics on certain nights. So David works on helping people, and you're not really into the speakers. Like I have a whole bunch of speakers, and I have a lot of agents, consultants, and organizers, but you're not organizing events. But you are in the technical and into the book, so I've got an authors club that I can promote events. So you would be fitting into, I guess, anything that we want to write, that we want to edit, but aren't you going into producing too? Aren't you going to help people cut or edit events?
Well, I help them with, I wouldn't necessarily say events. It's oftentimes the producing that I do, and the book, I say book publishing, but oftentimes I will send them to, if they've gotten to that point, it's like, okay, it's written, it's been edited, you've got a good product. Again, it's, are you going to self-publish? I'll send them, wherever they're going to go in self-publishing, because again, there's becoming more and more avenues. There's more and more distribution points, and companies that will handle, again, almost like traditional book publishers. Depends upon the genre, but here again, there's ways to get out there and self-publish. But when you're a self-publisher, you're wearing all those different hats that you would find at a book publisher for the most part. And then the same thing true, as I said earlier, you have to know who your book publisher is. So it comes down to that very same thing. But when I go to send somebody, I don't really actually publish anything directly. Oftentimes I help somebody find a book publisher. So unless they're doing a fairly small run of something more local that they're trying to, test the waters with, then there's then I can publish something small. But for the most part, I don't really want to get into, and have to compete with, big businesses that already exist that can handle a bigger quantity than I'm willing to deal with. I will do something that will be local and small in most cases.
Well, a lot of people are, like the younger kids are all on Instagram or Snapchat, just trying to build their influence among their friends, I guess one might say. So they may grow up being great influencers and the way television's changing, but podcast is up and coming and it's only going to get bigger, folks. So if you want to do podcast, get in touch with David or me, and we'll try to get you on a weekly show. But, we can take this blog talk now, and, of course, it's going to be here for me because I archive. I happen to be an archivist and historian by nature anyway, not to mention an author and a publisher, but I didn't get into the animation yet, and I know that it was offered to me about 5 years ago from India to get into doing animation, but I've seen some artists that draw, and they do great animation. Now, I like watching those on YouTube because they're creating a story telling you what you can do, right, from home base. So if you're an artist, consider, what you can do at home and put up there for people for entertainment right now during this time. And there are great tools and technology to help you do that. But once you get into business, I like to watch analytics and trending hashtags. And, I'm not really, I think I've got on the Instagram, TJ Morris Reporter, but I don't really want to report anything. So until I get out and about, I won't be reporting anything on Instagram. So I do report these podcasts I do on my Facebook. I have a lot of people for years, I'd say 12 years, didn't know I was into radio because I never posted it. It was mostly, like David said, for family and friends, right? But what happens is family starts finding out you do these things, and they're like hurt at you because I didn't know you did that. I didn't, I've had a few family members come on here during a hurricane. My daughter came on, and my sister came on for a veterans 9/11 2000. The 9/11. So only on certain occasions will people in my family come on, David. How about you? What kind of talk shows would your people think about people that would want to do podcasting? You know anybody?
Most of the people that I know that are into podcastings are, again, connections through LinkedIn. And they, again, much like what you and I are doing right now, other than some of theirs are written, and they'll come to me and say, okay, is this a good program? Is this a good script, basically? And I'll edit for them. And then oftentimes it's like, oh yeah, that works better than what I was originally going to say. So in podcasts, yeah, some people they're written, and others they're more, shoot from the hip type of thing. Whatever comes out of their mouth at the time comes out of their mouth at the time. So it oftentimes, they don't have a, they might deal with a subject and it'll wander wherever it's going to take them. Others are more disciplined and have a full script.
Okay, so yeah, we can make MP3s. It used to be our MP4s, I guess, now with video. It used to be audio only, and podcasting our radio shows, and we can make commercials or infomercials and run a little stock music behind it, or before or after, make you some infomercials too. So we'll have to work up what we're doing at home and add to our speaking tools and podcasting and creating domains and websites and businesses for you, and have some business analysts. And some people do email marketing, and I've never been one to do that. It got to be where people, if you send it out for one or more, unless they're really close and want to know something, it becomes spamming. And they made all these rules for spamming. So I don't suggest large, unless you're working with people in a meetup group or some group that you happen to know the people. But you can't just do large mass marketing. Now, my friends on the corner in real estate still, I can believe it, they still do send-outs around here in Gulf Breeze and maybe other places in real estate. And they get people to rent their projects or their quadplexes or duplexes, right, based on the mail-out. So, again, folks, I guess it depends on the kind of business you want to be in and if it fits your advertising scheme. Now, marketing and advertising is different from public relations. So since David and I aren't getting paid for this, this is public relations. This is costing me to talk today. I don't know if that's smart working at home or not, but really, to tell you the truth, I've got this paid for anyway. I'm just using up some air time that I've already got paid for. So, it's not hurting me at all to get David out here on
one of the things about emails, and just to finish that off quickly, is that you have to sign up for an email, and it must also have a subscribe in it anymore. In other words, you just, and this way you can avoid, unsolicited email. But this is what email has gone to for that very reason, because somebody gets a hold of your email address, and all of a sudden you're getting, all of these ads from this, that, and the other thing, from one business to another business, and you have absolutely no need or want or desire from them, and you can't get all, and you're just wasting a lot of time having to go through your emails and delete all of these unwanted emails. So, the society and the nature of emails, has gotten to the point, it's almost like, the do not call list. If somebody, so if you're getting unsolicited emails from a business or an individual and they don't have an unsubscribe button on there, you can certainly report them to usually a local city agency, sometimes not the post office, but you can certainly have it tracked down and say, this is a spammer, this is somebody I can't get rid of. I don't know how they got my email address. And there are organizations out there that will shut these places down. I can't think of the
sales movies. Well, I think that's why so many of these marketing and salespeople in other countries have gone to LinkedIn, especially from India, because so many of them were taught by Microsoft and AT&T. So many of these huge companies were over there for years until people started really complaining about their thick accents. Mm-hmm. And by the time they got customer service on the phone, they couldn't understand them. But I've got quite a few friends here in the States from India that own businesses, a lot of the Patels. And my daughter works for the Patels here at Days Inn in Navarre, where we have our conferences for people. But also, I have quite a few friends. I talked to one today, and I met a new one today. So I won't mention their names, but they're friends of mine on LinkedIn. But they also do the same thing that David and I do. They help people in business and get their books written and get their personalities out if they want to be a speaker at events. And, they want to know how can they fit into our collaboration. And, I do blogs and podcasting and domains and speaking, and I reseller, and I help influencers and publicists. So, I pretty much do a lot of things just to help users generate business to themselves as personalities. And I've had some publicists And people that author books, a lot of book companies have to, I guess people pay for the 2,500 thing with book publishers or something extra money to publish, because it's the famous thing that unless you're, like a Clinton, a president, or somebody like that, they don't want your books, these publishers, because they're not going to. Now, very seldom do you get somebody like the Harry Potter series.
Yeah, those are,
that is a success story right there.
But
I don't know that we can help you make that kind of money.
Yeah, but at the same time, it still comes when you look at her story. Yeah, she shopped Harry Potter around to pretty much every publisher there in England, and they all turned her down. And she finally ended up with this, shall I say, small publishing company who looked at it and said, yeah, sure, we can do this. And oftentimes, there are people who say, oh, and they go, oh, look, we should have done this. All of these other publishers are going, we should have done this because look at the boatload of money. But the answer is that the reason those publishers that she went to and shopped around for turned her down was because in their minds, this is not something we do. This is not the kind of story we would publish. And that's why they gave her the pass. And sure enough, some other little publisher gets it, and look what happened. And the whole thing sort of blew up in everybody else's face. And it's like, dang, maybe we should have gone after it. The idea of $1. And you look at half of the rock and roll bands that were, that came out in the 60s and 70s and so on. They all had that same story. They went to one, they shopped around every record label, and somebody says, nah, we don't want that. And then some little small producer somewhere says, you know what? These guys got talent. We can do something with it. And next thing you know, there's the Beatles. And almost every industry has those kinds of stories where some little guy somewhere has some product, be it music or a book or whatever, and somebody says, yeah, we can do something with that. And that has been, oftentimes the case with me. I will help somebody, and all of a sudden, technology or that story or whatever becomes a relatively, well-known book or something of that nature, or a song or something. But yet my name doesn't get associated with it because I only gave them, they came to me and it only took me an hour to do that part of the project that they needed done, that solidified that product for them. So yeah,
well,
I got my hour's worth of pay out of it, and they made a boatload of money.
Well, how do they know how much to pay you for? Do you set a timer, or how do you gauge your time? Because people that are listening to us are going to know, well, okay, so they apparently edit books. I don't want to do that. But let's say they want to, write music. Maybe they're a guitarist and they want to get paid for their song. And somebody says, okay, write me a jingle, and I need an infomercial for 1 minute into my podcast, and I'm not a musician. So how would they pay them? How do they pay you? Let's get into how do they make money at home?
Well, I have an hourly rate, which varies sometimes from project to project. In other words, somebody wants me to go through and edit a script because they're trying to sell a movie. There's oftentimes a differently hourly rate for that because, again, writing for that, you have to write a different format. Same thing for books. Poetry is also a little bit different because it's a different type of writing. Again, you're talking, what's my time worth is really what it comes down to. And oftentimes it's sort of like I'm figuring out, okay, what's my light bill this month? And how much of that electric bill is really pretty much on me? So like any other business, I have to have a good idea of what I'm paying out, and that's going to dictate how much I need to charge, simply put. So oftentimes, and then it's also, your experience. You're now paying, the more you've learned to do things, you picked up things along the way, your time becomes more valuable. The fact that I can do something in 15 minutes that other people will take an hour to an hour and a half to do, and I'm willing to bill in that quarter of an hour, that oftentimes keeps a customer rather than chasing them off. Because some people will, just charge a flat hourly rate. So if they get something done in 10 minutes, they're charging that full hourly rate. And if their clients ever find out, to them, they sort of feel like they're being cheated. Well, unless you spell that out up front, my work is, so much an hour, and if I get something done in 10 minutes or, in an hour, you're going to pay the same rate. So I've learned to bill quarterly hours, just because that's the way I work. In other words, I find and get things done quickly. And my customers are happy. And for that reason, I get a level of work that is comfortable for me, and it's also comfortable for my clients.
So what can you do in 15 minutes for $12.50? Is it more that you do an hour, like that 1, 2 or 3 or 9 pages? I just grabbed a file to see what you could do, and you did a good job, folks. I mean, he did the basics because there was, and I didn't even know what I gave him, so I was shocked. But, checking the way that it's set up, and it depended on what I was going to use it for. But I think it just came off of some website template or something, and I just downloaded it into my computer. That was whatever it was on. I didn't pay any attention. But, you knew enough about the things in writing that most people don't pay attention to, especially in today's themes, and especially in WordPress. Nowadays we have blocks, and we, on our websites we do widgets, and there's talk, folks, that using templates, but now they're getting us away from what we used to do and just making it so easy. People are using, they say, well, I don't know what you know, and so they'd rather go pay and buy a simple little monthly Wix or some simple thing like that, so they can just cut and paste it over. They don't do what we did as editorial anymore, or working. But I've got a lot of different companies. It depends on what you need and the people. So let's say that they just want to do a simple domain. Now you've got a company, but you're known for checking out software for people as well, and you found some ways to just the cheaper software, and I guess that's what we ought to make some videos about, is our podcast, you and I, is grow a group of people that we can trust. LinkedIn is a funny thing. You can meet people all day there, and they're all doing basically the same thing, and they're all looking for other people they can make money with and outsource or grow if they can't do it. But, they're not Ogilvy or Disney or, any of the big groups, Oracles, or, any of the big companies. These are just individuals that may represent another company. But let's say you and I start looking at software, and if you recommend it, you're going to just bill them out. Okay, well, I'll bill you. I don't know if we should just tell them a minimum. What should people do at home? It's up to them. If they say, well, I work for, let's say, $35 an hour because I'm at home and I'm right out of school. Otherwise, I have to work directly for GoDaddy. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? You can work directly for a big company at home now, or you can just start working for yourself. But I want to grow some entrepreneurs at home that say, okay, TJ, I heard you and David talking, and I've got something I'd like to write or should write, and then can you help me get it formatted? Me or David or both of us together making a project. But then neither one of us do graphic design, so we'll have to hire a graphic designer and let you know what that's going to cost, unless you can load it yourself direct. And that gets a little complicated even for me, because sometimes my book covers fit and sometimes they don't, David, and that's when you start getting into pixel counting and size. So we ought to come up with some kind of study or survey, but we don't know, right? Of software we can put out there, or either write it or build it and figure out what people need. You work with musicians, I work with musicians. Now, a lot of people are coming to me now wanting me to help them edit what they've already done, or they've taken their phones out but they don't know how to edit properly, or they want to put their business information inside their infomercial, things like that. So there's all kind of things we could do, but we want people to do it for themselves. So you think we should do Podcast 101 or help them learn their domain, or we can help them get their blogs going if they have the time. Nowadays, people have more time at home. I don't know if you want to talk about blogging versus podcasting versus Vimeo or YouTube, but I see them doing a little bit of everything. I don't know. I'll let you talk for a minute.
Again, it comes down to what somebody wants to do. I mean, I typically, for the way back when I took radio and television production, there was a joke that was often heard and used where somebody says, yeah, I have a face for radio. And what that meant was is that they didn't have a very pretty face, but they had an excellent speaking voice. And so, therefore, you, buddy, should stay, in radio as opposed to getting yourself in front of a camera. Because some people just aren't as photogenic as others. And so there's something to be said for that as well. And this is oftentimes when you look at newscasters and reporters, typically we use that phrase, the beautiful people. And there's a certain amount of that goes on in television broadcasting and radio as well. And as they say in radio, you don't have to have a pretty face. You just have to have a pretty voice. That was always the running joke whenever we'd run into somebody else in the industry. Oh yeah, you've got a face for radio. So here again, I'm more camera shy than anything else. I don't mind speaking, on the radio necessarily, because I've been told, you've got a fairly good voice. And there again, in doing a blog, you have to be kind of an actor. You have to kind of know where and when to raise the pitch in your voice or lower the pitch in your voice to bring certain accents, because you're still having to make it entertaining. And if you just don't have an entertaining voice and you can't talk and you can't tell a story, you might, blogging or, might not be for you. So here again, and there again, the more you practice it and you become better at it, the less time you have to spend editing, so on. You start cutting your production costs. That's one of the other things that goes into my pricing, is how much production time I have to spend on doing any given product, whether that project is editing somebody's story or poetry, or the time I'm spending looking for somebody else to maybe do just that, the graphics, or to do the artwork. Here again, that becomes part of my price to somebody in doing a project. The other thing that I would tell people also, if you're going to be a writer, you have to negotiate a price with that book publisher when you get to that point. And so how do I know what my, what kind of price should I go after in my book? And the answer is, you say to yourself, okay, I think my time is worth $30 an hour. So you basically keep a time card of, okay, I wrote for 3 hours today, so that would be $90 of it. I wrote 4 hours yesterday, and how many hours every day, and you keep track of it just like you would a time card. And then you multiply that at the end when you've got that story done, and you say, okay, I spent $2,800 on writing my story as far as my time was concerned. Well, that becomes important to then negotiate a price with a book publisher, because a book publisher wants to do everything they can to lowball that writer, because they're in the job of making money. That's their business. They just happen to do it by printing books. So, they're looking to cut their overhead as much as possible, just as anybody would, and just so that they can also turn around and get the biggest part of the profit that they can. That's the name of the game, making money.
Well, the companies that are calling, if they know you've got a book or you're interested, that most of them are going to be working for companies, and that whether they're doing websites or selling things, or if you're interested in a book or writing your own book, you're going to start getting calls, especially in today's algorithms and the way they're tracking you from your cell phones, watching and getting up what you're going to. It's getting to be more and more like China. Of course, China's already got it set where if you lay your phone down, they want to know how much time you're not using your phone. They literally are doing this, folks, in China, where you are judged now by your credit scores on how much time you're spending on the phone, how much you're keeping it uploaded, your battery up. They can tell everything, where you go, what you do with your time, as to what credit you're going to get. And now, due to, I guess, the Bill Gates and Melinda Gates, whether good or bad, that's the jury's out for the entire world till we see down the road, because they, were interested in, we call them do-gooders on the planet, but they were interested in helping the world and went to Africa and saw things, so you can follow that on YouTube. But then they got into this inoculation, and here we are now, 20, 40 years later, after we all are into Microsoft and him making tons of money. Of course, he's been beat out by Amazon, but the thing is, they got interested in helping in the medical world and helping all these starving children or women that were having. They got into controlling the population and helping people save their children that they already had. So now we're all looking, long term as, well, they make the problem or see a problem and make the solution, but they still tend to gain from they're going to help the people in these countries, not just Africa, but India now, with those little, you can look all this up, this is public knowledge on YouTube, where they stamped them like in Nazi times, where they had those numbers on the Jews, which I still don't know what those were for. I don't know if you do, but there's a good book for you. But comparing that with what they're doing to everybody in the countries that they do not like Americans. We're privileged here. We're born, we have a birth certificate, and we're given a social security number, which sort of shocked me, because when I was growing up, I didn't, I had a birth certificate. I can look at it right now. I keep it near me now because of Homeland Security. I had a time going from Kentucky to Florida. You move from one state to another, you're going to find out what a country and why your information is so important. But in other countries, they don't have that. So they don't have a birth certificate. So, they don't really have decent names or ways to keep up with inoculations. So I guess if the Gates are going to put money into these people and these babies, they want to know where their money's going to save these beings. So it's almost like they're marking them now. And as far as you can look it up, these little tiny snap little needles that are going to inoculate all the babies born, and inside them have other codes too. And I haven't, there's some YouTubes out there, just follow Bill Gates or Bill and Melinda Gates or all of that, and look into it, because that's the wave of the future. Everybody being born is going to belong to somebody, or somebody put money into them or save their lives with their country. So the people with all the money can go into these countries and line up all the people. Here, David and I are just talking about you being here in America writing your own book. You can be in another country. I know you guys listen to me. I don't know if you'll find me on self-help, but this is just one of many talk shows I'm going to do to help other people. But, we're supposed to be privileged and ahead of the curve here in America. That's why I asked David in the beginning, was he proud to be an American? Because we have a lot of things going on to be alive. So there's no reason for us to sit home and not be doing something, especially in cyberspace, when we're basically the country that created it, as far as I know.
Well, I think both of us are of that generation of, we just don't sit around. I mean,
yeah.
My grandfather was the same way. I mean, he was always busy doing something, even though he was retired. You'd say, oh, yeah, I'm retired. He got out of the TV repair business, okay, and he retired. But he still did, projects around the house. He would do this, he would do that. He was always doing something, and that something was usually always productive. I say I'm retired, but yet, let's put it this way: I'm retired from all of the businesses that I first started out working in my grandfather's TV repair shop, and then and I've also learned, I was also working, sometimes as many as 2 and 3 different jobs at a time. just because I could, and sometimes because I needed to. Again, it was, sometimes need versus, want. I always learned new things along the way with every industry that I worked in. So, yeah, at this point in time, it's like, so what if I'm retired? I mean, I'm still running a business. So, but I'm also of that philosophy of, if I can't have a good time doing what I'm doing, then it's time to find something else to do. So I'm always, I will joke and kid around a lot about what I do, and because it also takes pressure off of the job. Because I'm also that firm believer of, if you enjoy what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. And I learned that a long time ago. And I go, my gosh, it's true. No matter what job somebody gives you, if you can't find fun in it, then it's time to find something else to do. And I've always followed those two.
We only have so many seconds. I'm sorry, go ahead. Perfect
philosophy. If you're going to work, and that's just it. I don't believe in work. I believe in doing a good job, number one. And I also enjoy, I have to enjoy it. But then again, I've worked for, bosses that would go out of their way just to make that job miserable. And I'd still find, fun and humor in it. And it would drive that boss up the wall. And that sometimes was the thing that would change it. Okay, he doesn't want me to have fun with it, and it's going to, okay, fine. I'm going to do this and have fun with it and just watch him, drive that person up the wall. And then after a while, they finally stop and they say, oh, I'll just let him do whatever he's going to do. And then it makes it much better for everybody else I was working with, and that's just it. Again, you talk about, teams, which we talked about a little bit a while ago. Yeah. I'm also a firm believer of, you put people who know what they're doing, how they're going to do it. They almost know, as we say, they finish each other's sentences for each other, That's teamwork, where you know what the person that you're working with is going to do and say next. And you don't have to sit down and hammer out a plan because you've already done it. And you do it over and over and over and over, and you become, basically that well-oiled machine in the process.
Well, I've got people, too, that want me to help them free, and I guess this is free, helping people on listening, whether you want to make money at home or not. But if you want to just get on Google Chrome Store and look what all they've got, you can look at all the apps, just like the kids do, GitHub, GitLab. I don't know what you guys look at, Google Keep, Google Calendar, Outlook 365. Just look at what they've got out there, not just the games, but things to do to help you. There's different ways you make money with Google and Outlook and Google Docs and podcasting, and put all that together, and then maybe you'll find some stock music and some stock photos you want to put together on YouTube or on your Wiz or Wix or whatever. They have free ways to make videos out there. But, if you decide you want to get some help, then come to us or join our little club or whatever. But I'm going to start learning more, and I think I enjoy learning. So I'm going to always be learning. So I'm going to be on here. And we're getting close to the time, but I've got a tracking time button on my radio show, and then we can put it in productivity. Now you can get it at your extension at your Chrome web store, and I suggest a lot of my friends are using Zoom Scheduler, Office, Google Translate. Those are the top ones on your Google Chrome store. But start getting familiar with what so many of us around the world are doing. It doesn't matter if you're not working, if you're not doing podcasts, if you're not blogging. You can go to Blogger, sign up for a free blogger just to get your writing chomps on, just brainstorm. You don't have to write anything in particular and go back and look at it. You can edit it right on Blogger. But Google has helped a lot of people get into the Internet, and there's all kind of tools to get you involved. So look at all the free stuff And then when you start wanting to make some money and getting good at it, and then you can also be, like I said, an affiliate, or you can join our group for training. We're going to have webinars and training classes and help you on Skype. Skype is free. Of course, I see $6.35 or $12 come out a month because I talk to people around the world, but you don't have to have a phone number. But come look and see what other people are using in their resources, and if you need it. And then I've got a Patreon account, and you can make you one. If you're an artist, author, or radio show host, domain is Patron, Patron. They call you a patriot or Patreon customer. Put what you do on there, Patron. And it's for me, it's patreon.com/join/ and I use Theresa J Morris because there were so many Theresa Morrises. I found out that traveling the world and going to casinos for 20 years. So lots of Theresa Morrises. And hopefully someday I'm going to learn to be a comic. We may have it where I have one show a week, or if I get brave enough where you can do stand-up comic, because it's not easy being a comic either, but you never know when you want to go to a show. But we don't have one of those. We didn't have them in Kentucky either, but where you can go do some stand-up comic. What would you call that, David? Let's say, you were in theater, weren't you?
Well, I was in stagecraft, and I would eventually, I would do more. I started getting to the point where I was directing more, and I would still work in the booth and do lights or whatever, which was mostly what I enjoyed doing the most.
Behind the scenes, huh?
I like the guy. I want to be the guy who shines the spotlight on somebody else and makes them look good. That's where the satisfaction comes from me.
Well, that's like being a publicist for people out in California or New York. But also, if you just want to help writers, and then a lot of our people, just so you know, the events tie in. If you're anime or Comic-Con person or a paranormal person or a UFO person, see, that's how it ties into my radio. And I'm just going to tell you right now, there's something wrong with your picture sideways, and I didn't do that. The one you sent me, David, is sideways, and I can't get it off of my radio show now. And I know you did. It looked straight up, but when it flipped itself, and I can't get it off. So these are questions you need in technical support, folks, but there isn't one at Blog Talk Radio. So when you hit the episode, I've erased it. I took it down off of the show tonight. But if you see it right now when I'm looking at my upcoming, it's got David's picture. I like the one with your beard and glasses. Is that older or younger? You look good
that was older. Oh, I only had a mustache back then when that one was taken, that I used for my profile picture on LinkedIn.
That was older or younger now? Which one?
Well, it was when I was younger.
Okay, well, what's the one with the green? That you don't even have.
That was today. That was
well,
today.
You just look younger now. That's weird. You just took that one?
Yeah.
That's strange, but you don't have any glasses or beard. But you look much. Isn't that weird? Yeah. But I guess that's for a lot of people.
I had cataracts. I had cataract surgery, son. So now I don't have to wear glasses when looking at things close up. Before I had to, because I was farsighted. Now they changed. They put these implants in the lenses that save me from having to wear my glasses. 90% of the time. So
all right.
Before, I always had to wear glasses.
Well, folks, look at affiliate marketing, because you can pick up whatever it is that you want to talk about on your podcast and then sell it on your domain. And if you want a domain, come to me or David, and I'm going to throw up some WordPresses. But, Dave, I've got you on TJ Morris Radio. I just threw that up. I buy domains for fun, folks, and create. But nowadays, with the SSL certificates being so expensive, I can't have 75 to 100. Neither can most people unless they're mega rich. But I am going to keep a few names up just for marketing purposes, or what we call educational entertainment in my business, because I do podcasting. But we're going into videos, and I'm going to be doing webinars, and hopefully David can come and do some for his industrial documents just to show what we can do. And I think we're going to get into some more videos, too, because that's what customers want. But I'm going to stick with David's. I'm going to run 60 an hour because I got to make a little bit off of him. But I'll throw his prices up on TJ Morris Radio. But most everybody I worked with made 60 to 150 an hour. Janet makes 150, and our psychic readings are $1, $2, and $3 a minute, which I already told David. But we're going to get some co-prices up there to see if we can't run a weekly Talk Live Shows podcasting, and I bought that domain. I don't know if it's Talk Live Shows or Live Talk Shows. I bought one of them. But, David, you're on tjmorrisradio.com. You're also on TJ Morris ET Radio and ACIR Radio. So I got you on the 3 brands that I own. And, of course, you're on blogtalkradio.com where this is live out of New York and recorded immediately. But it will go on. Give it about 10 minutes. It loads it, and then it puts it out. Spreaker gets it about every 15 to 35 minutes for most everybody. But within 30 minutes or so, you'll be up on YouTube. You're going to be on the YouTube. Now, my American Communications Online is my reseller account, but that's the one you'll be on that matches Spreaker as my company. Because right now, I don't want to pay more money to all these channels, but you'll be on American Communications Online Broadcasting, David, and any of your customers that want to make a live podcast. But tell them it's $60 an hour is our normal charge unless they want to go on my Patreon and support me monthly. And I think there's some kind of discounts on there. But you get half off because you're the partner with live talk shows. But go to ACO Radio, folks, and see David. It's under, what is it, Talk? Oh, Talk Shows Live. My brain just kicked on. So I remember seeing David's picture, believe it or not. David L. Rivera, folks, helping us with his company is Industrial Documents, and we're going to be writing money at home business and doing some 101 classes. And as we find some good affiliate partners, we'll let you know. Because I only want to have people in David and our ACO Professional Association. But the ACO is for American Communication Online, folks, if you wonder, our ACO Club. And then live talk shows. And we'll start running some. It may be easier for people to come on here and get their, radio or their club or their books or their meetup groups or their events or, even whatever they're doing. I'm a type jockey. I like to type, but I do the radio as a side gig I got for doing events and writing infomercials. I was writing commercials, folks, for radio shows and got into doing my own music and radio and running my own recording center in Kentucky. But I'm starting all over again. So, Dave, you did a good job. You do have a good radio voice. And if you will, just post this and let's see if we can't work together. Listen to it, and we'll figure out. Would you like to come back next week or another night, or you want to just do one a month, or you want to see how this goes? Or I know you're
let's see how this goes. Because, like I said, I got a house to rebuild and all of that, so I have to deal with those folks, and they're only during the day, which means I'm not going to sleep for days on end.
Yeah. Well, if you have that you start marketing and you're getting people that want to do shows, just let me know because we can do those. We can record them at any time, day or night.
Okay.
And we can record ourselves anytime, 24 hours a day. David and I are both sort of late night people anyway. I don't know if you want to call it a sleeping disorder or not, but anyway, when you work internationally on radio and helping people with their businesses and writing and get audio and video, you pretty much have to be available to all countries 24/7. So a lot of us that have gotten to be in cyberspace, folks, we're working 24 hours a day. That's your technical support people helping you get your domains back up and get your radio and podcasting going. So just let us know if we can do it. We're here to assist you. So meet me back here. I'll be here Thursday night with psychic readings and people. It's like a Dear Abby, and it's a lot of fun, and we record those on Thursdays. So I'm recording Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays for fun, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday for people that have their own businesses. So let me know what you want to do, David, and we'll get you started up here. And how long? You don't know how long your house is going to take. It may be all summer. So you're on
6 to 8 months.
Oh, my. So 2020, you're just going to have to fill in part-time helping other people then unless they're steady customers, right, on an hourly basis. Is that right?
Yeah.
But you got to get your new equipment set up. Well, think about doing podcasting and YouTube and editing, and get back in touch with me, and we'll get some more business. But at least I've got you on ACO Radio, and I'll put you a spot. I'm building that ACO association, and I'll keep you up as a technical and technical support and writing and editing, and let people know. So, folks, I guess that's it. David, any last words other than look up what's your company again is Technical Documents, right? Or wait, is that wrong?
Industrial Documents. The company is Industrial Documents.
Well, it's close. No cigar, but
all right.
And then we'll try to figure out how to be more fun, folks, and we'll write you some infomercials or do some 1-minute MP3s or 4s you can stick on YouTube. I'm sure, David, you'll be good for that. So just let me know who and what you need and when. We'll be right here. All right, at least come back once a month. If not, when you're doing your show, just book some time and we'll do another one, maybe an hour, and sell an hour to somebody else. Okay. Take care, David. This will be ready for you. Download and put on your Industrial Documents, folks, with David Rivera. Good night, David.
Good night.
Good night, John Boy.